Making a follow-up to, at the time, the highest regarded game was no easy task. That's why when time for a sequel came, Miyamoto decided to play his cards straight and do the most by-the-books follow-up ever seen, creating what we now know as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. A game so difficult that it wasn't released in the United States out of fear that its difficulty would send the game market crashing down again. Well, that is to say until 7 years later, where it made its first Western release via its inclusion in Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo. Instead, the US got Super Mario Bros. 2, which was released on October 9th, 1988. Now, you might want to take a seat for this next factoid, but did you know that the Super Mario Bros. 2 released in the US originally wasn't a Mario game? Jokes aside, the fact that the US version of Mario 2 is a retextured and improved version of Japan's Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic is such a commonly known tidbit that you can probably go to the nearest hospital, say this fact, and newborns will start screaming about how everyone knows this already. I'd say that it's probably the most well-known video game fact. With that said, not much exists for the pre-release side of things, seeing as it was a modification for a previously existing game, thus meaning no early level designs or the sort. Which is a shame, as this game got major coverage in the first issue of Nintendo Power, including some really weird artwork of Mario.
And you get to talk tough!
This town ain't big enough for the two of her. Let me try. Hey, punk.
So it sucks to see nothing of note in these. Hey, wait a minute. Now, where have I seen this before? Wait.
Voila!
The title screen sprites are all also missing the whites of their eyes. But why? In case it wasn't obvious enough, I'm alluding to a massive revelation. That thankfully, a prototype exists. Before we get into dissecting the prototype, I left a few things out of my last video that I want to make up for, so let's get that out of the way first. Thankfully, it isn't that much that I missed. As a matter of fact, there is only one thing. With that said, I really regret missing this one, as evidence shows that the game was nearly named Mario's Adventure, at least in the United States. Funnily enough, the largest piece of evidence comes from an ad that was trying to sell Versus Super Mario Bros. To arcade operators, or should I say Versus Mario's Adventure as it's titled here. Well, now that I'm finally able to sleep with that off my back, we can finally get into the main course, the prototype of Super Mario Bros. 2. And boy am I excited to talk about it. I know that in the last video I said that pre-release materials are my favorite part, and while that still holds true, prototypes come in at a very close second. I always like the fun of trying to piece together what could have been from pre-release screenshots. It's like a big ol' puzzle. And while prototypes are neat in the sense that they can answer the questions presented by pre-release content, they happen so infrequently I can't help but put old screenshots to higher regard. With that said, this prototype has a plethora of interesting differences, so I'll cut the crap and just get right to it. First up, and the most obvious difference when first booting up the game, the title screen uses a much different palette, which is more reminiscent to the sepia style. It also features a few small differences between the story, really just changing some words here and there. Like it specifically describes the voice as faint in the prototype compared to the final where it just says a voice, and he is specified as Mario on the second page, just in case the player forgot who he is. Moving on to the character select screen, we have one difference that's practically worthless, being that there is an ellipses after the life counter in the proto that was removed in the final. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to generalize a few differences here, starting with the most obvious change, the character sprites. Except for Toad, his sprite was already flawless.
I'm the best!
Mario, Luigi, and Peach all had whites of their eyes added between here and the final. That's why, for one, the title screen doesn't have the whites, and secondly, why some Nintendo Power screenshots don't have them either. Here, I even tried to recreate the Birdo screenshot to prove it. Peach's crouching sprite originally looked much, let's just say uglier. Like, holy crap, it's horrific. Yes, I know that they're only literally 4 pixels different between the two, but the final looks leagues better, so this is a much appreciated change. Goodness. Other than that, there are some other smaller alterations between sprites, but does anyone really care that Toad has an extra few pixels for feet? No? Well, alright then. If you are interested in more obscure minutia like that, please check out the Cutting Room Floors page on the prototype. They help serve a massive role in researching for these videos, so shoutouts to them in general. Another more general change is that most of the sprites aren't nearly as animated as the final. The POW blocks don't scroll, the Albatos have an embarrassing 2 frames of animation, the grass doesn't sway in the wind, and so on. The biggest difference overall is that for some reason, you cannot run. Despite being a seemingly essential mechanic in platformers, the original version of Doki Doki Panic lacks the running button as well. The addition is much appreciated, as the game can be incredibly slow at times without it. On to some more specific changes. The potion that's used to access the subspace areas in the final are magic lamps in the proto. This is the same sprite as the final version of Doki Doki Panic, so between the lack of a running button and a few more leftovers here and there, this is probably just an in-between on transitioning into Mario 2, presenting a more final-looking product, but still holding a few leftovers, such as the conveyor belt seen in the final stage, which got changed, likely to fit more in line with the style of the Mario series more than the style of the original. Some more leftovers from Doki Doki is that the slot machine that appears at the end of each stage thankfully got quite the facelift in the final, to look much less, well, green. On to the last big visual change I can notice. Yeah, these waterfalls looked pretty bad, likely due to just the worst animation used in this prototype all around. Stuff that's different for both Doki Doki Panic and the final Super Mario Bros. 2 is what I plan on covering here, most of which are seen at the end of the game. For one, you're awarded prize money depending on how many deaths the player accrued throughout the game. The less you've died, the more money you get, whereas in the final, you simply get declared to be the MVP. The ending as a whole is a lot less cinematic. The final features a curtain call of sorts after revealing that, spoiler alert, the entire game was a dream. Whereas here, the imprisoned Subconian residents say thank you, pay you, and you get a pretty lame the end screen. Very pathetic indeed. An unintended side effect is that the amazing credits theme is in the prototype, which as a matter of fact reminds me of the most infamous change between here and the final. Take a listen to the final game's underground theme. Now listen to the original version. Very, very nice indeed. You know, I'm surprised that not many people discuss this song. It is really good and really different than the final. The Starman theme, while less of a massive difference, is also different than the prototype, which more heavily resembles the version used in Mario 1. Now that all the big stuff from the prototype was covered, I want to talk about a really fun feature. The fact that this game has a debug mode enabled by default. By pressing select during gameplay, you get a bunch of extra hits. Funnily enough, it seems like this was accidentally put in a commercial. But by far the best part is that if you press the A button while on the title screen, the number of times you press it coordinate with a world, but you can also access corrupted worlds by pressing A more than 6 times. This is honestly just a lot of fun to mess around with, so if you want to try it, well, check out the Cutting Room Floors page on it as it hosts a download link. It's fun to mess with and can lead with some fun moments, such as Welcome to Hell, Welcome to Hungary, accidentally completely breaking the game,
Nice, I love this level.
illegal transportation, and so much more. It's quite a fun feature to experiment with, and if you're bored and have an hour to kill, I'd say give it a try. And that's the prototype. Now that we've fully covered the prototype, we can finally get into the cut content found within the data of the final game. Now after that huge dump of information from the prototype, I don't think that there's much that can top what's seen there. As a matter of fact, all of the cut content here are merely leftovers from Doki Doki Panic. The previously mentioned lamp, some earlier Albatos sprites that were seen in the prototype, they're replaced with much better, more detailed sprites, as well as some leftovers from the prototype ending, featuring the money symbol. Not seen in the prototype, but here we have another leftover from Doki Doki, the heart piece that was eventually replaced with the mushroom in the prototype and the final, as well as these 2 unused tiles that were used in Doki Doki Panic's ending, but don't really have an equivalent in Mario 2, so they remain unused. There's also an unused sound effect that was supposed to be used whenever the player takes a fatal hit, but for some reason, it doesn't play. Ending on a high note, we have the iconic unused smiley face that became the mascot of the Cutting Room Floors website. It's unknown what it was used for, but if I had to guess, it could be a placeholder for the Poké's face, which could be supported by the fact that, for one, they're obviously somewhat similar, and secondly, this sprite is used in the desert tile sheet. That's solely my speculation, and it doesn't really have a lot going for it other than some circumstantial evidence, so don't take that as fact. And that is Super Mario Bros. 2. While there are a plethora of version differences between Doki Doki and Mario 2, too many for me to comfortably cover here. There are plenty of videos that have already done so, so if you are by any means interested in the differences between the two, I linked a bunch of videos that document such differences, as well as the Cutting Room Floors page. I'm not covering the differences between these versions, as we're here to look at stuff from Mario 2, and not Doki Doki Panic. And yeah, that's just about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This one has been really fun to make. I really like getting to play through the prototype a bit, mess with the debug mode here and there. If you liked it, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, all that jazz. But I would just like to say thank you guys for helping me reach 100 subscribers. I now have a custom channel URL. So, plenty of new videos coming down the pipe work. Next up, obviously continuing the trend, we'll be taking a look at Super Mario Bros. 3. So, be excited for that, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.